I do have one thing. These are for patrons. It's a bonus question.
Yeah.
Do you think there is potential for us to see women in roles as Catholic priests, bishops, or popes in the Catholic Church?
Simply put, no. And the reason for that has nothing to do with where the church is going, or my desires, or your desires, or anybody else's desires. The Catholic Church, people believe that is up for discussion. What is up for discussion, and has been up for discussion, and will continue to be up for discussion forever, is whether priests should be married. That is up for discussion. And I'm going to tell you why that's up for discussion, and why women priesthood is not up for discussion. And it's very simple. We follow Jesus Christ. And there is evidence of men being married and becoming priests in Jesus' time. Peter had a mother-in-law. Right? Like there's evidence of that. We know that some of them were married when Jesus called them, right? And then throughout the church, the apostles followed that same example and called them away. That's a large question to go into as well. But there is never evidence in the scriptures of Jesus calling a woman into priestly ministry amongst his apostles, those whom he confirmed the priesthood on and sent out. And so that being the case, that's a wrap. Like, and again, that's not judgment on anything. We're just trying to say, why did Jesus do that? Like, we can ask forever, why did Jesus do that? Because wouldn't it be the case that his mother was the most faithful of all disciples? She was. She's the greatest saint. She's amazing. Like, if there was one person that he should have called, it should have been her. And next, like Mary Magdalene, how faithful was she? She was standing by the foot of the cross. She could have been killed. She was there, faithful. Who was more faithful than her? Like, she should have been called. Some people say, maybe Jesus didn't know about it. It was just the times. Like, our culture has changed. Well, to that, I would say also, all the pagan religions of that time had a female priesthood. It's not as if Jesus didn't know it was possible. It's not as if Jesus didn't have the opportunity, or he wasn't thinking about it. For whatever reason, and again, we can ask why forever, but for whatever reason, Jesus called an all-male priesthood. And I could give many explanations why that is, but what we believe foundationally is that we don't change what Jesus Christ, we try to stay true to what he has created. And part of that is that priests are called in persona Christi Capitis, which means that we are called in to be the person of Christ the head, right? A priest is meant to represent him during the Mass. Like, if we believe what we do at Mass, we bring forth his body and his blood. We are called Father for a reason, because the Father of the Church comes and gives his life for the children, right? And so even in the imagery of fatherhood, right? Jesus was a man. We stand in his person. We represent Jesus for others. And we bring out, right? Jesus is the face of the Father, right? Even that would be blurred with a female priesthood. But fundamentally, we could say many reasons why Jesus said this, or we could argue why he did or why he didn't. Fundamentally, the reason why there will not be a female priesthood in the future, and why that case is closed, and you can read John Paul II's comments in 1994, where he said that, and people were listening or where they weren't, is because Jesus himself did not choose that for the church. And that says nothing about, and Jesus always treated women with equality and dignity, and the complementarity of the sexes, right? Those things are always going to be together. That is, and those who say it's suppressing of women, no, like that has nothing to do with what Jesus exalted women. He did things that Jews were not meant to do. He spent time alone with the Samaritan woman. He shouldn't have done that. He rescued Mary Magdalene and stood up for her in the face of all the men. He should never have done that, right? He did things. He did things that Jews would never do, but he did them because he was changing the game. It's not as if Jesus ever dissed women. He always honored them. He always knew their place and there were women disciples who always followed Jesus. He didn't dismiss them. They were part of the crew. Again, all that to say, Jesus knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he acted in a particular way for the kingdom, and he desired an all-male priesthood. That's why we won't change it.
Right.
The question of married priesthood is up for grabs. And even so, there are married priests in our church.
Right. In the Eastern Rite, isn't that relatively common?
And particularly those who are converts. Like we allow some, like for instance, the Anglican Communion. When Anglican priests are married and they come into the Catholic Church, they remain married and they become priests. So there are those ways. It's not the conventional way today, but there are exceptions for that, and that's why. Because Jesus allowed it. So we're talking about what Jesus did, not about any kind of like modern ideology.
Right, of course not. Yeah. Look, the Word of God and the Word of the Catholic Church does not change with the times based on society's popular opinions. That'd be ridiculous. Right. It wouldn't be a very meaningful faith, if that was the case.
We'd be fractured.
Yes, absolutely. And
we'd follow personalities.
Have you ever heard that, I haven't looked into this admittedly, that a large reason for the strict, I don't know what to call it, legislative move, I guess, of making sure priests do not get married had something to do with land grants in not the Middle Ages, maybe a little before that. Like if you became a priest, you would get land and each member of your family would get a lot of land. They were like, hey, that's a lot of land that we're giving away now.
Yeah.
You ever heard that? Or is that
I don't know. Certainly different times called for different things, but I think the thing is that a father of a family has to provide for his family. Right. And so there was that mix up of well, what does he need? If he's not working and he's not working in the fields, he's not working for pay, he needs something to be able to provide for his family, something to pass down. I mean, he has to provide for his children. He has to provide for what if he dies, right? They can't survive really without him. So how does that work? And certainly, so you talk about land, that all gets confusing to me. But at the same time, we do know that a father of a family has responsibility. And for that reason, he should be able to provide for them. Well, how does he do that? And maybe the land at that time was as a way of giving to the priest so that he could provide for his family and still do what he's called to do as a priest. It gets complicated and certainly wouldn't work today like that.
Right.
Like practically speaking, it couldn't happen, so.
Well, very interesting. Thank you for a great answer there. And you're welcome, whoever asked this question. Okay, now that is a wrap. Woo! And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to that episode of The Paul Garcia Show. If you enjoy this show and you want to support it, please consider donating a couple of bucks on Venmo to The Paul Garcia Show. Additionally, you can also support the show's production on patreon.com/Paul Garcia, where for as little as $1 a month, you'll gain early access to each and every episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to The Paul Garcia Show on YouTube, follow it on Instagram, like it on Facebook, and subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. As always, thank you for tuning in to The Paul Garcia Show. God bless, and have a great week.